Happy Saturday, happy 4th of July. I gotta do a quick sound check just to make sure everything's working. Yes! Okay, everything sounds like it's doing what it's supposed to, so that's good. Uh, Happy 4th of July. Wherever you are today, whatever you're doing, I hope you have a fantastic day. This is a huge day for America 250th. Huge milestone. Okay, good. Sounds working. So that's typically half the battle. Uh, so my plans changed today. Originally, I was going to be riding with my buddy on our motorcycles across South Dakota, and I wasn't sure if the weather was going to hold out for today because looking at the weather earlier this week, it was kind of hit or miss as far as the forecasts. It looked like it was going to be overcast, looked like it was going to be cooler in South Dakota, but then the weather kept changing. And then last night, as we both checked out the forecast for today, we have multiple rounds of thunderstorms coming through. So I I tend to be I'm not as big a daredevil as I was when I was in my 20s, but I I was debating on whether I wanted to become a human lightning rod, and it just wasn't worth it today. So it's a it's a little more difficult when you're on two wheels dodging thunderstorms, and especially if those thunderstorms come with hail. That's uh, that's where I draw the line for riding a motorcycle. I always tell people I can play in the rain, but I don't play in the crash boom. So if I'm installing customer gardens or whatnot, that's usually the line I use. Is that's where I draw the line personally. Is I don't mess around with the lightning. And then of course with severe thunderstorms in this part of the country, if we have tornado warnings that come with it, that that even makes it a little bit uh, more challenging if you're on two wheels. There's not a lot of places to hide. So I wanted to do something a little bit different today. In the past, I've talked about the plant nursery and what I have currently going on, which I will briefly talk about that. But since today's the 4th of July and it's more relaxed and we have the big celebration as a country, I wanted to talk a little bit more about some famous landmarks because those directly tie into my motorcycle riding. And then I also wanted to talk about uh, traveling with plants. So I got the question up there. It sounds like some of you have traveled with plants before, and that's something I've never talked about on these live streams. That's something I wanted to talk about today because when you grow in containers, it instantly makes your garden mobile, which is a very, very cool perk in my opinion. And I briefly want to tell you about some of the stuff that I've done in the past and some of the stuff that I've done for my customers. So with my plant nursery, when I first started in 2020, I was selling primarily through farmers markets, and then we had a market just south of here that I was at, and then the one that I was primarily at is 15 minutes down the road west of me, and since I was selling more of a retail experience, I had a lot of customers, and honestly, this blew my mind when I first started selling plants. So um, I won't share any names just to protect privacy, but I want to share a couple of stories because I thought it was just a lot of value behind it, and just give you some ideas of what you could do with container plants. So the first market that I sold at was in Faribault, Minnesota, and I had a customer who bought lettuce plants off of me. So I do, I did at the time, I did a couple different varieties of lettuce. So like romaine, butterhead. Butterhead was typically and it still is the most popular lettuce variety. And then some different types of loose leaf lettuce in grow bags. Now, I had a customer that bought a couple lettuce plants or lettuce grow bags from me and told me that she was living in her van, so she was homeless, and that's that was my first experience where I was like, wow, I didn't that concept of growing something that uh, was that valuable to a customer because their living situation, it just kind of resonated with me. I'm like that's something I never anticipated, and that wasn't the only customer that I sold container plant to that was in that living situation. So I was happy that I was able to meet their needs and provide them something that they enjoyed and worked with their living situation. So that was one of the first experiences that I had with that. It wasn't the last time I had somebody that told me that that was their living situation. So that was one. Some other plants that have traveled before through those farmers markets where I sold plants. I had a lot of retired couples that basically traveled around the Midwest or even across the country. Or there are some situations where uh, they would travel to a like a RV park or some type of a situation like that, and then they'd set up a shop for the summer, live in one spot, and then those types of customers were looking for like longer uh, bigger plants. So some of my popular plants were cherry tomatoes, slicer tomatoes, Roma tomatoes, and this is tomato season, so I wanted to share that. But so those were RV owners or mobile home owners that would travel to a spot, or they would travel across the country. And since we had a container plant in typically a 7 or 10 gallon grow bag, it worked perfect for their situation. So uh, really easy setup. How I had those types of plants with the larger tomato plants, I'd already have the rigging set up. So I typically use 2.5 or 4 foot bamboo poles that I would make a tripod of, and then just use twine to attach the plants to the tripod. So that was one situation. And then for my CSA customers, those are the ones where I installed a garden, and then the garden would get swapped out every month. So I don't know if I think I've talked about my CSA gardens. I'm not doing that this year because I've shifted the business to a different clientele. But when I was actively doing the CSA, I had it was so cool. It was like one of those off the cuff type of decisions that I didn't think about beforehand. But as my customers were telling me that let's say they're going out of town for the 4th of July weekend, or they're going on a week or two vacation, maybe a road trip, maybe a trip to a campground up in northern Minnesota, uh, but they really liked a certain plant. So one example I could think of was mini love watermelon plants in a 7 gallon grow bag. What I did was I actually rigged that up so they could travel with their watermelon plant and take it with them on vacation. Meanwhile, the rest of the plants that were left at home, they had my automated irrigation system. So what was very cool about this is that they could take part of the garden with them. I actually rigged it up to travel with them. And then when they got home, they didn't have to worry about their garden getting toasted during the heat of the summer because the automated irrigation system that I had set up originally was basically babysitting the garden. So uh, those are some examples of plants that I've seen or that I've set up for my customers to travel with them. There's a bunch more examples, but those are some of my favorite memories, the highlights of how I've been able to assist others with traveling with plants, and especially edible plants. So it's just a very cool story I wanted to share with you. But I put in the comments about uh, asking if you've traveled with plants. So I'm gonna peek at the comments right now because I see a lot of chatter. So let's get to this for our 4th of July weekend. So, Jay Ecology today says, yes. Several times I planned on and packed up quite a lot of perennial garden plants and bushes for moves to new homes. Okay, yep. Oh, Shawnee says I've received the joyous 6 inches so far. Do you have any flooding? Uh, we don't have any flooding. It's been quite wet, or quite a bit of rain, and I don't have a rain gauge here. My neighbor typically monitors the rainfall, so I'm not sure exactly how much rain we've gotten here. It hasn't been significant, so over the past week we've been getting some type of rain just about every day, but it's like fractions of an inch, so it's just enough to where I don't have to water the plants that are outside, but I still have to irrigate or water the plants that are in my high tunnel because they don't have access to the rain water. So we don't have any flooding. And then where my location is, we're on the north side of a valley. So if we ever did get serious flooding on our property, it would be biblical flooding. But yeah, flooding in the garden, that's no good. Uh, Shawnee also says chances of isolated storms here after two. Yep. So just looking at the forecast earlier this week and then this morning, we have multiple fronts coming through with thunder and lightning. So I guess the timing is right. So if we want a electrifying 4th of July, it's coming. Let's see. See, Jay also says I forgot that when I worked on market garden business, we moved plants to sell 4 days a week. Yeah, lots of moving of plants. Shawnee says I frequently travel with plants to the garden property. Not 70 gallons, they're 7 gallons. So for most of the grow bags that I do for customers, the max I go is 10 gallons. Now, my garlic's starting to get close to the point where I'm going to harvest, and those are in 50-gallon bags. So, what's cool about my 50-gallon grow bags is that uh, this is the first time I've used grow bags that large. They're not going to move because they're 50 gallons is quite large. So I set those up specifically because I wanted to experiment with garlic. Last October, I took a bunch of videos of the planting process, and then I've kind of documented that journey. So after I harvest the garlic here later this month, I'll be able to put some more videos together showing the complete journey of the garlic. And then also with those 50-gallon bags is I have popcorn in some, I have dent corn in some, I have onions, I have some dill, and I think I did some beans in another one. So that's sort of experimental to see how these 50-gallon grow bags. And then with those 50-gallon grow bags, I also used older potting soil. So the way my business works is depending on the plant, with most of the annuals, especially with sensitive plants like cucumbers, tomatoes, ones that are disease prone, after their annual life cycle, I'll bring the potting mix back. I'll actually unload the grow bag. The potting soil goes in the pile. That sort of composts, and then I'll take the bag. I'll sanitize it in hot water. I think I've mentioned this before. I use a brew. I used a brew kettle. I've upgraded to a turkey fryer, a propane fired turkey fryer, and I get it up to 106 degrees, and then I dip the bags and any of my other nursery equipment in that to sanitize them. Um, but that old potting soil is what I used to fill the 50-gallon grow bags last year. for my garlic and then all the other plants that I listed for this year. Oh wow! Shadi says 30 minutes east of me had flooding. I-90 closed for a day. I was unaware that. I don't typically watch the news. I get the highlights sometimes, but I didn't realize Interstate 90 was shut down. So yeah, that's it. It's what it is. I talk about weather a lot, but and I won't talk too much about it today because we've I've mentioned it enough. But this year so far has been I don't know. It's just been Minnesota weather, so we've been kind of on a roller coaster yo-yo. And last week I talked about the book that I've been reading through with pathogens and disease pressure on plants. So I had briefly talked about how different pathogens, different diseases can affect plants in different environments. So when we were getting hot, there's a difference between hot and dry and the types of pathogens that can affect plants versus now, this whole last week, it's been fairly humid because the amount of rainfall that we've gotten. So I'm not going to be surprised when we have different types of plant and pathogen diseases, whatnot, show up affecting plants a little bit different this week, just because it's different conditions. So went from hot, dry to hot, humid, and the pathogens that are adapted to the hot, humid could potentially show up. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. The biggest thing I could say about that is the best friend for your plants is airflow. So for today, if you forget everything else I say, airflow is one of your biggest friends for keeping disease pressure down on your plants. You've probably heard this before, but that's why it's so important on certain plants like tomatoes to prune the tomato plant to open up the interior of the plant just to allow air airflow uh, to dry out the leaves. So if you get lots of rain and your plants are not protected in like a high tunnel, that's the theory behind that is to allow the plants to dry out as much as possible to deny access from those pathogens that would otherwise have access to your foliage. So that's that. Uh, Now, like I said, my buddy and I were gonna ride across the South Dakota today for the 4th of July, but that changed because of the weather coming in today. But that's okay. Um, so today, a little bit different. I've typically done the plant show on what's been going on in the plants here, but I wanted to stay on the theme with traveling with plants. So when I get to the plant show here in a little bit, I'm going to show you how I travel with my plants. And it doesn't even matter like what type of vehicle you have. So if you're in the RV, like I've had customers travel with the RV, or maybe a van, maybe a car, or even a motorcycle. And I'm going to show you how I travel with plants on the motorcycle because I I don't know if I've ever heard of anybody else traveling with plants on the motorcycle. Um, but being Meg and Meg's Edible Landscapes, I just like the novelty of it. And I could briefly introduce the plant that I traveled with last year. It was a peppermint plant in a 1 gallon grow bag. I shared some of my mint plants earlier this year when they're coming out of their hibernation over winter. And I think at this point, without further ado, I'm going to introduce to you Mint Rider. Mint Rider. So I gotta come right over here and we're gonna pivot to here to the plant show. So I want to make sure this switches over on the video. Should take just a second. All right. Okay. So I'd like to introduce you to mint Rider. This is a peppermint plant that I traveled on my Harley last year. My buddy and I planned we end up riding through South Dakota. We stayed the night in Rapid City, South Dakota, and then we traveled up to Billings, Montana, and stayed the night in Billings. And then the next day we drove south into Wyoming. We took, and if you haven't been on any of these roads, I highly recommend, and you don't necessarily have to be on the motorcycle. It's a ton of fun on the motorcycle, but even taking a car up through what's called Beartooth Pass, it's a magical experience. And if you like the mountains like I do, well, not even like I love the mountains. I belong in the mountains, so it's therapeutic for me. So Beartooth is the name of that pass. It's a very long, winding road to get up to the summit. What's very cool about Beartooth is that, from what I hear, they have snow up on the summit year round. So even when we got up there in July, we still had plenty of snow up there to see. So uh, we went through Beartooth, and then we ended up going through what's called the Bighorn Mountains in Wyoming. So the plant that you see right now, mint Rider, or my peppermint plant in a 1 gallon grow bag, I was trying to figure out different ways that I can mount that to my motorcycle without getting it wind whipped. So so this one was attempt. I have a windshield on my motorcycle, and I actually took zip ties and I zip tied the handles of that grow bag to the handlebars of my motorcycle. I tested it out, so I rode a couple miles, but I was getting so much crosswind that it just didn't. It was getting unhappy, and I didn't want to wind whip the mint plant. So that was my first attempt to attach it to let it sit outside with me. The next position I had was I mounted it right behind me on the passenger seat. Same thing, it was just getting too much crosswind, so I ended up settling on this next spot into my saddlebag. So that was the that was the most protected spot, was the saddlebag. So it was protected in there. It didn't get any sunlight, but that's okay. And then when we would stop at different landmarks across South Dakota, Montana, and Wyoming, I just pop open the saddlebag, and then I'd either let it get some fresh air like you see there, or I'd put it on the ground, or I'd put it on my seat, or whatnot, so I could get some sunshine. Looks like Dave Knight joined us. Good morning. And it sounds like you had some rain, so yeah, we're all getting rain this 4th of July. And if you're just joining us, this is what I nicknamed Mint Rider. It went on my a road trip last year, so this was where this guy got a ride for the week trip that we went on. So I'm going in order of our trip as we went west across South Dakota. So this spot right here, if you've never been here, if you recognize it, you might be. I have a next shot that's zoomed out, but this is the Badlands in South Dakota, and that's uh, another famous park, national park that's just fantastic to drive through. They have a ton of trails that you can walk to. You can actually go up and touch some of these the rocks, the formation. It's just very cool. So anyway, we stopped here, got a bunch of pictures, walked around for a while, and then I snapped a couple pictures of Mint Rider here. But this is the Badlands in South Dakota. It's kind of crazy because the Badlands, the first time I experienced it, it seemed like I was on another planet. It's so cool. But that's the Badlands in South Dakota. And then next stop we had was at Wall Drug. And if you haven't been there, that's another magical experience. And you've probably seen the billboards or the signs all across America telling you how many miles to Wall Drug. And since we were going west, we were counting down to Wall Drug, and once you get up to that point where you start to see as far as you can see north, as far as you can see south, that wall or the where it got its name, it just it's a beautiful landscape there. So anyway, Wall Drug, excellent pie. So they didn't pay me to say that, but their pies are excellent. The food's great too. Well, Shawnee, it looks like uh, Shawnee says I've driven to Deadwood, South Dakota. Yep, that's another famous town. Jay says mint puns are the coolest way to spice up a chat. Yeah, I love it. That's why I wanted to do something a little bit different today. So yeah, Dave Knight, I bring back plants from my travels. Do you have any favorite plants that you've brought back, David? That's what I'd kind of like to know. So anyway, this is again Wall Drug. This next one is Custer State Park. We're still in South Dakota. So like I said, every time we'd stop to for a break, I would just pop open the saddlebag and then I'd either put the plant on the seat or the ground by the bike, get a couple of photo shots, and then let it stretch its legs too. But this intersection, I want to tell you about this intersection right here. This intersection, we just came off of the Needles Highway. That's another famous road in South Dakota for motorcycles. But I was leading. It's just my buddy and I. I was in the front, and when we were getting up to the top on the Needles Highway, uh, they have a couple of tunnels that you go through. The first tunnel that we went to, there were right when we got up to the top of that, I was confused because there were there weren't a lot of cars, but there were maybe 60, 70 people that were right in the middle of the road. So I just kind of crept up there slowly, I, trying to figure out or see where the road would went. And then when I came up to where I could see the cave, I saw why, or I understood why there were so many people in the middle of the road. Everybody was taking turns at getting their selfies or their photo shots in front of the cave. So that was pretty crazy. So this is a huge tourist destination, Custer State Park, and then the Needles Highway. But this intersection right here that you see, this is one of the main drags. And then we took a break here just to stretch our legs. Uh, but what's significant about this point right here is that when I was still in the South Dakota Army National Guard, we did a big exercise out here, and we did a what's called a mass casualty exercise. So my unit was in Humvees and some other trucks, and then we pulled over the road on the side of the road where my motorcycle and the Mint Rider is to do a what's called a mass casualty. So think of like an IED or some mass explosion, something like that. Um, so we had basically scripts that we're supposed to follow, and we did this exercise on at the request of our medical company. So they wanted to do some hands-on training with multiple casualties. So the the best part of the story is that we had like makeup on, like blood and just simulated wounds or whatnot. So we were laying on the ground. We were very vocal. The medical company comes in their Humvees or whatnot to do triage of us. They're putting us on litters or tying like tourniquets or whatnot. But this road that you see across the highway from me, they have these traveling, they're open top, multi-person vehicles, like safari vehicles. So they do tours. So you have all these out of town people that were touring, and they saw all these National Guardsmen like on the ground with like simulated wounds or whatnot. And I could only imagine what they were thinking while we were doing our training exercise. But that was that was one of my favorite parts of this intersection right here. So anyway, moving right along. This is Needles Highway, Custer State Park. So Jay asked, did Little Traveling Mint have a name? Yep, it's Mint Rider. That's what we nicknamed it, Mint Rider. Let's see, Dave said yes. Eight in my boat, traveled 1,500 miles. Wow, that's impressive. Okay, this is Mount Rushmore. As you see, it's if you haven't been to this landmark, I highly recommend it. We were on a trail, so there's a trail that you can walk around. You see the Mount Rushmore at different vantage points. And then here, this is one of my favorite parts of this trip. So now we're going up Beartooth Pass, and we stopped right here so I could get a couple of shots with the mint plant. And if you're wondering if I used this mint plant for anything, we did. We made fresh peppermint tea. So that was ultimately why I carried this plant with us is at some point we were gonna use it to make some fresh peppermint tea. But this is Beartooth Pass. This wasn't up at the summit. This is I don't know. We were over halfway up towards the top, but but Beartooth, and there you go. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed those. I want to share that because it's that was a great trip. We're gonna I was gonna take some mint again this today, but like I said, the weather is just not gonna be conducive for riding on a motorcycle today without serious dodging and weaving of thunderstorm fronts. We're planning a trip later this fall, and I'm not sure if I'm gonna be taking a mint plant again, but definitely be taking something. I got plenty of new herbs too. It might even be something like apple mint or citrus mint or I'm growing wild mint this year too, which has a really strong flavor, so maybe we'll take something like that. Or I might even take a totally different plant, like maybe one of the ginger plants. I don't know. We'll see. Thanks, Dave. Have great travels with your mint. Yeah, yeah. So I ultimately I was a little disappointed I couldn't figure out a way to rig that plant up to right outside of the saddlebag, but it did just fine in the saddlebag. But anyway, that's it for today's live stream. Something completely different than what I normally do. Next week we'll dive more into plant diseases for this time of the year, and the humidity's here in Minnesota, so I expect the any type of issues to follow the weather patterns that we have here. So uh, happy 4th of July. If you're gonna be shooting off fireworks, be safe, and we're gonna see you next Saturday.